directly draw the thread to how much that was influential in me getting that first job. So apply to internships, apply to fellowships. Also, as someone who's been on the other side working with this program for high school girls, I've been on the other side of the application process for these kinds of programs, and all we want is for people who are passionate and dedicated to apply for spots in these kinds of programs. So don't self-select out. All right. Also, what I found to be really helpful in getting this first job at AIM&H was the fact that I remember in my cover letter, I spoke pretty extensively about the student research project that I did. And I think it was such a long-winded title, but my student research project that I did senior year was essentially about how international nonprofit institutions help do science education. And I did a whole paper on that. I went to San Jose to the American Association for the Advancement of Science's annual conference, and I was able to speak about that pretty extensively in my cover letter. And I think it's those kinds of experiences that give you the extra level of confidence necessary to not only apply for jobs that are at like big fancy institutions, but being able to just be confident in the interview. And I think it adds a level of maturity to be able to speak to specific projects that you've done that relate to what an organization is actually doing, so that you have something a little bit more to say, excuse me, so that you have something a little more to say than, oh my God, I really love X, you have something a little bit more concrete to point to. So I think it was the culmination of many things that I did in undergrad, but also specifically the internships and my student research project that was instrumental in getting me that job at AIM&H. So I did that at AIM&H for, I think, 2 years. For 2 years, I was with the Bridget program. And I eventually made a transition to another team that was working on what's called the Open Space Project. I'll get back to that in a second. So how did this transition happen? Essentially what happened was that about a year into me being on this team, my director left and my immediate manager left. And so there was this state of limbo and reorganization that was happening over the course of the 5 months that I was still on the team. And then eventually a new director was hired. That person and I did not get along. And I feel as though this is important to talk about because this happens often. This happens more often than I think media or articles online would lead you to believe. Sometimes, yes, there are reorganizations that happen in your workplace, and you're not going to get along with everybody. If school teaches us anything, it's that. But that doesn't mean that things everything's going to go horribly. It doesn't necessarily mean anyone's going to be fired. It might just mean that people get moved around a little bit. So in that context, it was easier to move me because I had a more general skill set than move this person who had come on to be the new director of the program. And so I essentially got to have a conversation with more senior people in the education department. And because I had had such a stellar track record at the museum so far, I essentially got to choose where else in the department or in the museum in general that I might want to transition over to. And luckily, there was an opening for a coordinator working on the open space project. And I immediately jumped at it because this is probably like the hottest thing 13-year-old me could ever conceive of. And in deciding to make this transition, it did also result in me getting a promotion in both salary and title, so I couldn't be too mad. So the Open Space Project is essentially like Google Earth, but for space. It's a NASA-funded project at the museum that coordinates with different teams in NASA to get data from different missions to create this software that's essentially like planetarium software, kind of like Digistar, but on steroids. And so this whole project was dedicated to the development of that software, and I was a coordinator on that team. And when I was having early conversations with my new director, it was really, really beneficial for me to have all of the experiences that I had working in Suko's planetarium, because it gave me a perspective that I know that she was not expecting out of someone who ended up in that coordinator role. Because planetarium operations is such a niche area of expertise, I feel like. And so being someone who was as young as I am, and being able to come in and know and have conversations around different kinds of planetarium software and have an astronomy education and just be able to essentially speak the language of the team right off the bat was really impressive to her, and helped to grease the wheels when I first started on that team. So I definitely have all of the planetarium work that I did at Oneonta to thank for that. So that's what I ended up doing at the museum up until I decided to leave. So why did I decide to leave? When at that point, I left in January of 2019. So I was at the museum for a grand total of, I think, 3.5 years. And I did a lot of cool things, and I was really proud of all the things I was doing, but I was also at the point where I wanted to take a little bit of a step back and reevaluate what I wanted out of my career and what I wanted to be doing on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of what I was doing in both departments that I worked in at the museum kind of fall under coordination and operations work. And so from that perspective, you're kind of like the oil in the machine. You're organizing events, you're coordinating with people. And that was definitely rewarding and something that I was good at because of a lot of things that I did in undergrad. But I was also thinking about what it meant to be someone who did some kind of work where you can point to it and say, like, I did that. So it's a little less abstract and more concrete. And because of everything that I did with Bridge Up, and being that open space, the Open Space Project was a piece of software, I'd kind of tangentially been involved in the world of software engineering without like from the lens of education. And so when I was thinking about what I might want to transition to, it was a really easy decision for me to say, I think I want to learn to code, and I think I want to be a software engineer. So when I quit the museum, that was my plan, that I was going to self-study for a few months and go to a coding school, for also commonly known as a boot camp, and get a job as a software engineer. So that was the goal. And I did end up getting into a program in the summer of 2019. I completed Codesmith. It was a wonderful experience. And then I found that that I like teaching for them. After I finished the program, I got an invitation to teach one of their entry-level classes. And over time, that evolved into teaching one of their more advanced classes. And that's what I do currently. And teaching has been really rewarding. And I've found that one of my strengths, even though teaching also gives me a lot of anxiety, one of my strengths, especially in this past year, has been being able to relate to my students who are struggling in my class. To give you a little background, usually people who are taking my class, which is like a 2-week prep program class to prepare them for the full 12-week program that Codesmith offers. And so there's a lot of pressure to succeed in this 2-week class. And the students that I have are usually people in their 20s or 30s. I've even gotten some people who are in their 50s making some sort of career transition, especially in this past year with all of the COVID-related unemployment. And so there's a lot of pressure to succeed. And so I've interacted with a lot of students who will send me a message in email or Slack and express like their anxiety around not being able to understand the material, or feeling like they're not moving as fast as their other classmates, or just like feeling completely lost in general. And at least I've been told after the fact that I've been very helpful to these people in helping them, understand that they need to be gentle with themselves, and that, yes, it's technical material, and so it is challenging, but it's not impossible, and they'll get there. And this relates back to the really early experience that I had wrestling with physics and math. Like, I don't think I would have the acute level of empathy I have now as a teacher if I didn't go through that experience. So I think that's really important, because, even though it was a rough experience for me back then, like I wouldn't trade it for anything, because it has informed my perspective in my work a lot. So that's the formal career trajectory. There's one other thing that I wanted to touch on, like something I've done a few years ago outside of work. So it was completely volunteer activity. And this was the Space Apps Conference. So every year, NASA hosts the International Space Apps Challenge, which is essentially an international hackathon that focuses on creating technology solutions for like these space-related challenges that the NASA team comes up with. And so there are chapters of Space Apps all around the world, and Space Apps NYC is one of them. And when I started on Space Apps, they had historically been a chapter who did a conference, but they didn't have a conference organizer at the time. And when I was having early conversations with the person leading the team, it was about 100 days before the event. So the date of the event is dictated by NASA, and it's up to each chapter to organize their hackathon in their local area, find a venue, etc. But Space Apps NYC also did a conference, so I said to these people, sure, I will help you do a conference, and I can totally do that in 100 days. And I was so confident about that because I did philosophy conference when I was at SUCO. And 100 days is also the same time period that students have to put on the philosophy conference, from like January, when spring semester starts, until late April. So I was completely confident that, like, yeah, I can give you a conference in 100 days, from, sourcing speakers to getting the people who have agreed to speak at the conference to talk to each other and set up panels, and get these people to all show up at a specific date and time. And while the scope was a little larger and there was a bit more money involved, at the end of the day, it's still event organization. It felt very similar to the philosophy conference. And so I can directly point to that one class that semester helping me take on that opportunity that allowed me to meet some pretty big names in the world of the space industry, like insofar as it exists in New York City. So like I got to talk to people who are up at NASA GISS by Columbia, people who do a lot of public outreach for amateur astronomy here in the city, people who work on the more technical side of things, for the International Space Station. I met a woman who, her job is to vet technical projects that end up on the ISS, and that was so cool. All because I said yes to this opportunity because I felt confident enough to do it because of something I did at Oneonta. So those are the major things that I wanted to touch on, and I just wanted to, wrap up with a few takeaways so that all of this wasn't just me rambling. So I guess one major takeaway is take risks. It was definitely risky for me to spend 2 years struggling as a physics major, and that was hard. But it is that part of my journey has informed so much of my work. I wouldn't trade it for anything else. So maybe don't take that big of a risk, but take risks. Also, expand your scope of experiences beyond your major. So I did so many things that weren't part of my immediate major, or just things that I didn't have to do, even taking Model UN my senior year. I didn't have to take Model UN, but I also spent some time a couple of years ago volunteering for the Metro New York chapter for UN Women, and I felt very comfortable in that space because I'd taken Model UN and I was able to speak that language. So definitely expand your scope of experiences beyond your major. Also, your professors want you to succeed. And this was definitely something I knew based on the relationships that I had with my advisors, both Hugh and Akam, while I was in Oneonta, but also since graduating and talking to different people about their experiences in undergrad, it has really made me realize how unique and special the kind of supportive faculty that SUCO has. So So remember that your professors want you to succeed, and talk to them, like form a relationship. They're there to help you. And then last but not least, it would be really criminal of me to go through talking all of this and say that, and to not say join a club. Please join a club. First of all, if you are on this call and you are a physics or astronomy, and you're a physics major or an astronomy minor or both, and you are not a part of physics club, I am judging you. As former president, I get to say that. But please join a club. And it doesn't have to be a club related to your academic major. It's just a matter of getting involved, like, because that's so important. And
President demands it.
Like, it's so important. And I just look so fondly, like, back on my experiences in all of the clubs at Oneonta. I even have my Woney glass out for y'all today. See, the love runs deep. I should point out that if there's one thing that my Woney experience has helped me with, is that I get to sound cool whenever I tell people that I used to DJ in college, like automatic cool points. So join a club, because all of these things help create a narrative that you get to point to whenever you are meeting new people at a volunteer organization, whenever you are crafting a cover letter for your job. Like, you may be someone who doesn't have a lot of job experiences, but if you're able to say, like, I had a leadership position at X, Y, or Z club on my college campus, that counts for something, especially if it's part of a larger narrative surrounding your interests. So that's all I got. I hope that was informative.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Happy to take questions.
Yep, it's no, I think it's so great to hear about the journey and the decisions and the risks and the struggles and the easy stuff, and so I appreciate it very much. I'm very upset with myself because I have we've had a few of these, and I've always wanted to record them. And 20 seconds before you started, I had in my head to ask you, and then of course I forgot. It does look like that. I think though Akeem was writing things down, so I think that's good. Does anyone have any questions for Camera about her experience or where she's going next, or anything? So this is the time of COVID, so that's the silence. You can put it in the chat too. Go ahead.
Question.
Yep.
Camera, it seems like you spent a lot of time in New York City.
Yes.
This is a conscious choice. Do you have experience from being from New York or spending time a lot of there before you went?
Conscious choice. I am a Brooklynite, born and raised. I have never left except for my time in Oneonta. And given the career path that I've chosen, I don't think I'm leaving anytime soon. So in the world of software engineering, the fabled land to be in is Silicon Valley, so the San Francisco Bay Area. But I don't really think I'm a West Coast person. So and New York City is also, I think, number 2, if not number 1, for software engineering jobs. So I'm already in the best place for what I'm doing right now.
I'm glad to hear that. One of my daughters just got a job doing software in New York City. So
Nice.
she's hoping to live in Manhattan. She's
Nice.
graduating this fall. So
Amazing.
I'll tell her your positive statements about software in New York. Thanks.
Absolutely.
You have a question in the chat about where you will be going next.
Oh, okay. There are questions in the chat. Cool.
Well, I'll watch it for you. So,
Okay. Where am I going next? So that is still something that I am undecided about. Like I said, I have found teaching to be really, really rewarding. It wasn't where I expected to land in terms of my post Codesmith journey. Because after I graduated Codesmith, I was applying for full-time software engineering jobs for a few months. And I was interviewing for these jobs, but I also wasn't applying as much as other graduates from my cohort, because at the same time I was also planning my wedding, which was going to be in March of 2020, but alas, that didn't happen because of COVID. But I still got married anyway. We just walked City Hall. So now I'm in this situation. I've taken essentially quarantine to figure out whether or not I want to continue teaching and be a content creator for Codesmith, or if I want to go back to the original plan and get a software engineering job at some tech company, or do both. I don't know. So it's all still a work in progress.
How did you, and if you are a student, oh, I see a hand up somewhere. Let's see.
Hi, I just have a question. My hand is up.
Sure. Who is this?
Alexis.
Oh, hi, Alexis. Go ahead.
Hi. So I know that you said that you had like a lot of setbacks your first 2 years at Oneonta.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find it like stressful or difficult to graduate like on time or like at a certain time in general?
That was a fear early on, given how stubborn I was with taking classes that I didn't do well over and over again. So that definitely was something that was a concern to me, and also to Hugh. But that's why we essentially had a conversation around finding something else for me to major in. And then when I did make the transition to philosophy, I was taking philosophy classes full time starting my junior year, and I was taking a pretty packed course load junior year and senior year in order to complete essentially the entire major in 2 years. So I had to put in a lot of extra work to essentially like complete a whole major in a shorter amount of time. But I did end up graduating in 4 years.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kind of a follow-up for that. If you had to go another semester, let's say, and I remember when we talked about it, we said the plan, you can keep going here, but you must develop a plan B so that you don't fall behind.
Yeah, which was smart. Thank you.
I just give it context. But if you had, if you had to stay another semester here, do you think it would have been a big deal, or are you happy you made sure you got out on time, or do you wish you had not struggled to do the philosophy so quickly and taken your time?
I feel like that's a hard question to answer because so much of that is dictated by your financial means.
Yeah, fair.
So I guess putting that aside, would I have wanted to stay another semester? I don't think so. I think like because of what I was doing my senior year, and it just felt like at the end of my senior year, like I'd cultivated so much success. It felt like that May felt like the right time to graduate.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And also it was a motivator.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
I do.
Oh, okay. I think that
Hi,
I
Cameron.
think Oldenburg.
Yes. Hi, Camera. Good to
Hi.
see you.
Good to see you.
So over the last couple of years before the pandemic, I was at a couple of Digistar conferences and AAS conference, and I met Carter Emmert, and it was really great to hear that you were doing really well. But I also had a quick question. Are you still interested in the ethics of human exploration of space, and whether you had anything to say about some of the things that Elon Musk has designs for Mars?
It's definitely something that I still have an interest in, but admittedly, I don't keep up with the news about it as much anymore because there's a lot in terms of like my current work with software engineering that demands more of my attention. So I don't really know like what the current things are like as opposed like outside of I guess like of the things that splash up on emails that I barely read anymore.
Gotcha. Yeah. I was just wondering, say, Elon's idea of terraforming Mars by basically nuking the poles.
Oh wow! Like that's one of those things where like that just sounds like such an outlandish idea. Like it can't not give you pause.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thanks for the talk. It was great, and it's good to see you as well.
Good to see you.
So we have another question in the talk, and I think in the chat rather, and I think this is a fellow Brooklyner, but I'm not sure, completely sure. What are the job functions of a software engineer?
Okay. Generally, and I think this is pretty language agnostic, as in like it doesn't matter if you're, if you're someone who writes Python as opposed to JavaScript, but you're going to be someone who will be on a project at a company, and so that project will be broken down into smaller engineering tasks, or also commonly called features for some kind of application or something. And so engineers will be broken up based on like your specialty. If you're someone who likes to deal a little bit more with the way let's say a website looks in terms of like the colors and the layouts, you're going to be on a different team as opposed to someone who is dealing more with say the database management of a web application. So and those things aren't necessarily exclusive. There are people who do both in terms of web development. Those are called full stack engineers. If you specialize, it's like say again, like with how the website looks, and you're working on the front end, or if you care more about setting up servers and working with databases, networking, then you're going to be working more on the back end. So there are different areas of working, but like functionally it ends up being pretty straightforward in the sense that there is some kind of engineering task that needs to be accomplished, either the creation of new features or maybe the erasure of some kind of bug. And you as an engineer will be given smaller tasks to work on like over the course of I guess however long your manager gives you to complete such a task.
Did you find the transition to learn it? What language are you coding in?
I code in JavaScript. JavaScript is the language of the web.
Got it. And
Yeah.
And did you find it difficult to? Did you take any computer programming while you were here?
None whatsoever.
And so, did you find it hard? And what coursework or background was most helpful to you?
Sure. I didn't find it hard because there is a wealth of resources available to helping people self-teach programming, essentially. This goes from online websites like Code Academy, that's pretty entry level, and then there are a variety of other websites that specialize in algorithm practice. So that those are sites like Code Wars or LeetCode. And even just YouTube has so many videos on code education. So I didn't find it hard. In the 5 months or so that I was teaching myself code, I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, like this is completely outside of my realm of expertise. I can't do this. Like it feels like freshman year over again. I didn't feel like that at all, which was definitely something I was looking out for, like just in case I did feel that way. I think the only thing I did feel was the fact that I was trying to make the transition very fast, as in spending a lot of time self-teaching in order to get into a program in a relatively short amount of time. I'd given myself a short time frame. So that was my only struggle, but I have not found. I feel like it's important to note that with a lot of code related things, like you're not inventing the wheel. Like these things have been done. Like people create websites, like they look a certain way. Like most websites follow a very straightforward thing called CRUD functionality. So being able to create data, read data, update data, and delete data. Like a lot of them essentially boil down to that, and that's nothing new. Like it's not like your only options are like going into cutting edge AI research. Like no, like it can be as simple as creating a web page. In terms of coursework that I found to be helpful, I do think there was one class that helped quell any anxiety that I might have had, and it was my symbolic logic class. My senior year, and it was really nice to be able to see threads of that in the code that like in learning to code in those first few months. Like, oh, like if else statements, like like logic trees, like it's all connected. That's why I love philosophy.
I think Akeem is smiling now. Or he actually may have had to leave and started recording the end. So you've made him very happy.
No.
It is true that she's made you very happy, though.
I'm always very happy in camera.
I see another hand up.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
I've heard about you before.
Oh my.
You're the one who wrote a paper about mining on asteroids and the ethics of it.
Oh, yes, I am.
Oh my God. Wow, I'm glad I got to meet the person that did that. That was very cool to hear about. I'm actually in a kind of similar situation as you were. I started off as a physics major, then I joined the dark side for music, though, and take a lot of philosophy classes. Hi, Dr. Powderman.
Nice.
And I was wondering, how was your transition to kind of doing a lot of things, kind of being a generalist, to being a lot more focused and focusing on programming and just one thing at a time? Did you find it difficult, or was it actually enjoyable? How was it?
It's enjoyable for different reasons. So I can easily fall on either side of the coin, in terms of like operations and organizing people versus like doing I don't know what's the best way to say it? Like I guess like you said, more focused work, and there's a lot of writing on this already. It's commonly referred to the maker versus manager problem or concept. And usually in a job, you're probably going to fall more on one side than the other. And I'd found that with everything that I was doing at the museum, I was in the scope of management, essentially. I was someone who coordinated events. I was someone who made sure people knew about things and were at the right place at the right time. And these were all things that I'm good at. They are things that I enjoy to an extent, but I always felt like my influence was a lot more abstract than I wanted it to be. And there has been a urge in me to do something that's very different from that, being able to create something. And that could have manifested in a variety of ways, depending on my interests. It could have been in terms of music, like making my own music. But because of all of the experiences that I had, code seemed like a good way to go about that. And I like very like slowly dipped my toes into it and then like went full throttle. So it was winter break, December Christmas break 2018, and I was playing around with code on Code Academy, and I thought, wow, like I'm actually pretty good at this. Why haven't I actually sat down and tried to do this before? I've been around so many people who've done it, like through the Open Space Project, and even high school girls who like did some amazing code projects. So like, I'm definitely smart enough to do this. And so I spent 2 weeks teaching myself JavaScript, and I thought that this is it. Cause like for a couple of months like before that, I had already been thinking about wanting something other than what the museum could offer me. So I was already thinking in terms of making some kind of career transition. And once I found that I really liked code that December, I literally gave my boss my 2 weeks notice January 3rd when we all came back. So again, when I say take risks, like I don't necessarily mean like go as hard as I do sometimes, but something to consider.
Well, thank you very much.
For sure.
It's good to meet you, Cameron.
Good to meet you.
Well, anybody else with some questions? It looks like we're good. I want to thank you so much for joining us. It was so insightful, and it was such a pleasure to listen to you. And I'm very mad at myself for not asking you and recording it. But
It does say a recording has started, and that popped up.
someone started that at like 55 minutes.
No, it popped up pretty early. I noticed it. So
Oh.
there might be a full-ish recording of this floating around somewhere.
We'll see. I'll let you review it before I do anything with it. But
Okay.
but it was so terrific of you to join us, and again, I'm so appreciative for the fact that so many students have insecurity at the current time, and some faculty. And actually it's harder now. But you definitely have told a nice story about seizing opportunities as they come. And I think that's and getting it through some bumps in the road too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Someday you'll be able to come back.
Someday.
Have you been in the new science building?
I have not. I have not.
Yeah. Okay. So someday that's what we'll do. Ooh, Josh, Valerie.
Yes.
Note to self, guest alumni planetarium program. We could have guest presenters.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Oh my gosh.
That sounds fun.
Don't worry, Cameron, it's not just you, but that would be a thing. I should also we have another astronomer here now, Dr. Rapson. She comes to us from the Dudley Observatory, where she did a ton of outreach, but also expertise in observing and simulating planetary observations outside the solar system.
Yep.
That okay, Valerie?
Yeah, close enough.
All right. Thank you. Great seeing you, Camera. Thanks to all who attended. I really appreciate it. For the students who showed up, I did not take attendance,
I did.
but I did notice who was here. So, and Dr. French did take attendance.
Thanks.
And
Thanks, Dr. Gallagher, for arranging this, and thank you so much, Camera.
Of course, anytime.
take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, and thank you, Akeem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Camera.